Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. My life changed very quickly from being very happy with a great marriage to the princess of our town, two lovely kids, a successful business, and living in my favorite place. But then things got really bad in just a few weeks. I live in Culverson, a small town in the Midwest with about 1,000 people. The closest big city is about 60 miles away, and there are some smaller villages in between. In our town, we have a few important shops and services. We have a couple of stores like Walmart where you can buy groceries, toys, clothes, and more. There's also a small pharmacy, a true value store, and a farm store. For food, we have a couple of places to eat, but there aren't any fast food restaurants here. We also have a bank and a credit union for money stuff. Amidst these establishments, my computer services business thrives. Primarily focused on consulting, I offer hardware solutions like computers, servers, and monitors catering to clients who seek comprehensive network packages. Among my clientele are esteemed institutions such as the bank, the local hospital, and the school system. My closest competitor operated in the neighboring urban city, yet I still managed to attract clients from there and frequently found myself troubleshooting their networks. But before delving further into my professional life, allow me to introduce myself. I'm John Edwards, 30 years of age, standing at 6 feet tall and weighing in at 180 pounds. Up until recently, I was married to a woman I'd known since middle and high school, Amanda Butler Edwards, though soon to be remarried as our divorce has been finalized. Our union lasted 7 years, which I believed were fulfilling, but evidently Amanda had a different perspective, blindsiding me with the divorce petition. It's worth mentioning that Amanda and I weren't high school sweethearts. In fact, we scarcely interacted despite attending the same school. We didn't really hang out together, not even in college. Honestly, I felt some anger toward her back then. She was like the princess of our town because her dad owned the only bank there, called Butler Federal Bank. Her dad gave loans to local farmers, the feed store, Mark's Superstore, and almost every other local business. In our town, people usually went to the bank in person rather than doing banking online. Even I got a loan from her dad's bank to run my small business. But let's get back to Amanda. It wasn't until after we both finished college that she started showing interest in me. I have to admit, I had some crushes on her during high school. She was the classic beautiful blonde, tall, nice body, and she was the head cheerleader. As for me, I was pretty into sports. I played football, basketball, ran track, and played baseball. Now, Amanda wasn't exactly stuck up, though she might argue against that label if confronted, but she did exude an air of entitlement. In high school, she dated the quarterback, a multi-sport athlete named Simon, who also excelled at basketball and baseball. Simon eventually earned a full-ride scholarship to a different university to play football, which marked the end of their relationship. During our college years, Amanda and I traveled in different circles. She was heavily involved in her sorority, which happened to be the largest on campus, while their corresponding fraternity held the same status. They were constantly hosting events, keeping Amanda occupied outside of classes. On the contrary, I was more of a nerd. Much of my time outside of class was spent delving into hardware, software, and various systems, grappling with the intricacies of computerization. My field of study demanded as much dedication outside the classroom as within it. Moreover, I had to hold down a job to help cover expenses that my modest scholarship didn't fully address. My dad worked at Mark's Superstore as a manager. He earned just enough money to get by, but not enough for me to get any extra help. To show you how different our lives were, my parents' house could be 4 times bigger and still not as big as Wayne Butler's house. During the summers, my dad and I would go camping almost every other weekend. We loved fishing together. Meanwhile, Amanda and her family went on fancy vacations to places like Aspen, the Ozarks, Miami, and sometimes Hawaii or Maine just for fun. So Amanda and I were really different even though we were from the same small town. When I came back from school, Amanda suddenly wanted to date me. It felt like she was following me around. Honestly, I didn't really get why she liked me so much. I had started my own business, but it was just me running it at first. I got some money to start it, and I made a small profit in the first year. Eventually, Amanda mustered the courage to ask me to dance one night when we both found ourselves at the same bar with a live band playing. Surprisingly, we clicked well on the dance floor. Thanks to my mother's insistence on learning various dance steps, I didn't embarrass myself too much. As the bar closed for the night, we parted ways with a kiss by her car and my promise to call the next day to arrange a proper date. I grew up as an only child, a result of my mother's medical condition that hindered the normal development of a fetus. I suppose you could say I was a bit of a miracle baby. In contrast, Amanda had a brother who left home at 18 and essentially disappeared, perhaps due to his strained relationship with Wayne. In the year following my graduation, tragedy struck when my father succumbed to a sudden heart attack. My mother recounted how he had been discussing mowing the yard, only for her to later discover something protruding from the small shed door at the back of our property. By then, it was too late. My father had collapsed, and despite the arrival of the ambulance, their efforts to revive him proved futile. He had already passed away by the time my mother found him. Despite our budding relationship, Amanda attended my father's funeral, offering me comfort as we laid him to rest. Her presence by my side at the cemetery, her hand in mine, and was a solace amid my tears. Moreover, she displayed remarkable grace towards my mother and the handful of family members when traveled great distances to support us during our time of grief. Fortunately, my father had ensured that our family home was fully paid off before his passing, and his substantial life insurance policy provided my mother with a steady income for the remainder of her life, provided she managed it prudently. It was a blessing amidst the challenges that lay ahead, which I'll delve into shortly. Contrary to the cliché of a man chasing a woman until she catches him, Amanda and I followed a different path. She pursued me, initiating our dates and our intimate life. I won't go into all the details, but let's just say we got along really well in bed. From my point of view, our relationship became exclusive, and I didn't hear any rumors about her seeing other people. We spent intimate time together 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes I had to travel to nearby areas for work. Some big farms wanted to connect all their computers, like the ones on their tractors, milking machines, and home computers to Wi-Fi. Because of how far apart everything was, my work sometimes kept me busy until late at night. I often wondered if Amanda stayed at her parents' house waiting for me to come back. Oh, I almost forgot to mention Amanda's job. Because she studied women's studies in college, she had trouble finding a good job in Culverston, so she ended up working for her dad. She started as a teller at the bank and quickly moved up to become vice president of the loan department. While her rapid promotion might have been attributed to nepotism, she dedicated herself to the role and diligently educated herself in the intricacies of banking as her father desired. Reflecting back on those years, I can now see how I was maneuvered into marriage. One evening just before Christmas, Amanda dropped the bombshell that she was pregnant and demanded to know my intentions. Raised with values instilled by my parents, I immediately proposed marriage. In hindsight, I should have been more skeptical when Amanda and her mother selected a wedding date 7 months after the announcement of our engagement that Christmas. However, by the time I realized the deception regarding her pregnancy, the plans were set and countless invitations had been dispatched. Confronting Amanda, her response was nonchalant. She simply shrunk her shoulders and justified her actions by saying, "If I left it up to you, we would never get married, let alone engaged. I love you and you love me. This will work." As for myself, I was enamored with the town princess. Our physical chemistry was undeniable, and the thought of sharing a life with Amanda was appealing. So despite uncovering her deceit, I chose to go along with the wedding plans rather than rock the boat. Our wedding became the talk of the town, a grand affair that hadn't been witnessed in Culverston's history. Every soul was invited, and we even scheduled it for a Sunday afternoon to allow businesses to close. The feast was lavish, catered by a firm from our neighboring urban community. Our honeymoon in Barbados was quite the adventure. Amanda discovered a clothing-optional beach, and she relished the freedom of nudity almost every day we were there. Surprisingly, we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves, immersing in all the island had to offer. We explored everywhere on a motor scooter, and even went snorkeling in the clear waters of the Caribbean Sea. When we got back from our amazing 2 weeks, it was time to get back to work. By then, I had grown my business to have 3 technicians and a secretary to help keep things organized. Before our marriage started having problems, we worked really well together. About a year after we got married, Amanda told me she was pregnant, and this time it was for real. Our little girl Jennifer was born, and she was perfect. She became the most important thing in my life. Then our son Oscar was born, and he was just as wonderful. Our family was complete, and I was so happy. But things changed in our 7th year together. Amanda started having to work more, with lots of meetings in the evenings and on weekends. While I could understand the occasional banking conference, the frequency of these events seemed disproportionate to the workload. Despite Amanda always being reachable on her cell phone, and no signs of missed calls or unusual breathlessness in her responses, I couldn't shake a growing sense of concern. Our intimate life suffered as well, as Amanda was often absent before bedtime. With my own work keeping me occupied and the need to retire early due to early morning customer visits, our time together dwindled. Although I had more assistance with the business, it was primarily to prevent me from burning out. Despite our collective business, I prioritized being home in the evenings, especially considering Amanda's unpredictable schedule with the children. I recall vividly the last time I shared intimacy with my wife. It was a Friday evening, and to my surprise, she had already returned home and prepared a delightful supper for us. The children were ecstatic, chatting away with their mother throughout the meal, so much so that we had to remind them to eat. Afterward, we all pitched in to tidy up the table, loading the pots, pans, and dishes into the dishwasher, before settling down together to watch Shrek for what felt like the umpteenth time. The children were overjoyed to have Amanda back, and she had to personally tuck them into bed that night. I was strictly forbidden from entering their bedroom. Once the little ones were settled, Amanda returned to the living room, carrying a couple of glasses of wine, and adorned in high heels and a delicate garment known as a babadol, which only enhanced her beauty. We settled on the couch and sipped our wine, while Amanda whispered what she wanted me to do that night. She didn't want affection and love. No, she wanted hard, and I gladly gave her what she asked for. I exerted myself to the fullest, pouring every ounce of energy into the moment until I succumbed to a dreamless slumber. When I woke up on Saturday morning, Amanda was already dressed and holding an envelope. She said, "Time to wake up, dummy," which was strange because she had been nice the night before. I felt confused and tried to understand what was happening. She said the kids were ready to go to her parents' house for the weekend, and that's where she would be too. She told me I had 48 hours to pack my things and leave the house. She said she would get a restraining order against me on Monday because she thought I was mentally cruel and might become violent if provoked. The divorce papers in this envelope will be filed at the same time. I was dumbfounded, struggling to comprehend the sudden turn of events. Summoning whatever courage I could muster, I managed to stammer, "What's happening? Why are you doing this?" "Simple, stupid," she retorted dismissively. "Simon has joined the bank as Dad's right-hand man, and we're getting married as soon as my divorce is finalized. We've been reconnecting for months, and now it's time to make it official." With those words, she delivered the final blow to my world. "Oh, and one more thing," she said casually. "Simon can't have kids, so he wants to adopt Jennifer and Oscar." Then she slammed the door and left me feeling like my whole life was falling apart. For the next 12 hours, I couldn't stop thinking about the letter she left behind. Amanda's demands were overwhelming. She didn't just want the house, she also wanted my business. But under her terms, I would barely make any money from it, even less than my employees. She wanted full custody of the kids and asked for child support that I couldn't afford. She had already spent most of our savings, leaving me with almost nothing. And even though she would earn more than me, she still wanted alimony, which seemed really unfair considering our different financial situations. While Amanda's car was in her name, mine was owned by the company I worked for, so I could use it as long as I had a job. Facing the tough reality of my situation, I decided to do something about it. I got a loan to buy a pickup truck and trailer, since our mutual friends couldn't really help me. I asked some old high school friends for support, and they came through for me. We loaded up the trailer with my stuff that Amanda probably wouldn't argue about. With nowhere else to go, I went back to my workplace. I had bought the whole building the year before to expand, and I found a small, neglected apartment on the second floor. I decided to make it my temporary home. I spent all of Sunday cleaning and organizing it. I used an air mattress for a bed and got some old furniture and kitchen stuff from my friends for comfort. I only had a modest microwave and a cooler for food until I could get a refrigerator. Monday morning was tough. Sleeping on an air mattress made me sore, and there was only cold water in the shower upstairs. I had to use a small tank in the bathroom downstairs for warm water. Despite all this, I managed to look presentable after shaving. I needed legal advice, so I tried to contact some local lawyers, but they weren't very welcoming. It seemed like my father-in-law had already spread bad things about me. I couldn't get any help, and even the loans I depended on were now at risk. I had to go to court that morning, feeling alone and vulnerable. Judge James presided over the proceedings, and an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. His close ties to the Butler family, evident from his frequent appearances at their events, coupled with the likelihood that his financial affairs were intertwined with Butler Federal Bank, did little to assuage my apprehension. The judge's first words were directed at me, his tone stern. "Mr. Edwards, why are you not represented by counsel?" "Your Honor, I humbly apologize," I responded, attempting to maintain composure. I was served with the papers by my wife on Saturday morning, leaving me little time to seek legal representation before today's hearing. Despite my efforts, no local attorney was willing to take my case. I respectfully request a continuance to seek counsel from outside the area." "No," came the quick answer. "I don't understand why you're delaying. The court set this date 3 weeks ago, and you were told about it when you were given the papers. You had time to get a lawyer and give your financial information. Trying to delay things like this is wrong." "Your Honor, I object and want this on the official record," I said, my voice desperate. "It feels like I'm being pushed into a settlement that only helps my wife and hurts me and our kids. Our earnings are listed together, so she knows my finances. Asking for child support doesn't make sense. And she plans to get married right after our divorce, so I shouldn't have to pay alimony." The judge banged his gavel emphatically. "Silence. You, sir, are out of order. You've had ample time to respond to the summons. I rule in favor of the plaintiff," he declared firmly, slamming the gavel down once more before abruptly exiting the chamber. I was left reeling, the reality of my situation sinking in with brutal force. In a matter of minutes, I was divorced, facing the prospect of limited access to my children, and my business had been stripped away. Glancing at my ex-wife, Amanda, I detected a flicker of guilt in her expression, quickly masked by a haughty stare. "You better get to work," she admonished coldly. "I don't pay you to sit around looking like someone just ruined your day." As hatred threatened to consume me, I forced myself to maintain composure, acutely aware of the watchful eye of the bailiff. It was clear he harbored no warmth toward me. Simon and Amanda's attorney rose from their seats, exiting the courtroom. I remained seated, biding my time. I couldn't afford to provide them with any ammunition that might land me in jail, a realization that dawned on me as a plausible goal of theirs. The bailiff approached me discreetly. "They should be out of the building by now," he whispered. "The other bailiffs are keeping watch. But you know the influence the butlers wield in this town, even in the county. Get yourself a lawyer from the state capitol. That should put enough distance between you. We sympathize with your situation, but can't risk being implicated." I nodded in appreciation and thanked the bailiff for his discreet counsel. Stepping out of the courtroom, I couldn't shake the feeling of being scrutinized by the uniformed personnel lined up to observe my departure. Heading straight to the office, I was surprised to find that Amanda and Simon hadn't arrived ahead of me. Their overconfidence had played in my favor for once. Without delay, I ensured that all staff members were preoccupied with their tasks. Seizing the opportunity, I hastily drafted a check for cash and dispatched our secretary/bookkeeper to the bank with strict instructions. She was to explain that I would be out of town servicing distant clients and required cash for the trip. I chose not to visit the bank personally, anticipating potential obstruction. If a court hadn't officially said the business belonged to someone else, the bank couldn't say no to me taking out money. This kind of thing happened a lot in small towns. People like to use cash instead of cards to avoid bank fees. My name was still on the bank's papers, so I could take out the money I needed. My credit and debit cards weren't working, so I took out cash instead. Even though there was enough money in the account to pay my employees, I didn't want them to suffer. So I only took out a little bit of money to pay them. I also took all the cash we had in the drawer and left a note for my ex-wife and her new partner. I felt like I had lost, but I also wanted revenge. Amanda, Simon, and Wayne needed to face consequences for their actions. As for Wayne's involvement, it was clear to me that he was the mastermind behind the ordeal. Had it not been for his influence, I would have been served with the divorce papers earlier, securing the opportunity to enlist the help of a local attorney and receive a fair judgment from the court. But Wayne's disdain for me, coupled with Amanda's compliance, fueled their scheme to exact revenge. In the late afternoon, Amanda and Simon finally made their appearance at the office, ready to assume control. Presenting Dorothy, our secretary, with signed court documents showcasing the transfer of ownership to a new corporation, they relegated me to the role of a mere manager rather than an owner. Fortunately, they refrained from publicly announcing my diminished status and salary. With only Dorothy privy to the details necessary for processing payroll, the rest of the staff remained oblivious to the discrepancy in our earnings. Aware that Dorothy would likely inform the rest of the staff about the changes, I resolved to maintain business as usual, at least for the time being. When Amanda and Simon made their unwelcome appearance, I quickly concocted an excuse about attending to a client's urgent needs and swiftly departed. The last thing I needed was to risk violating the protection order and inadvertently play into their hands. Thankfully, the protection order only mandated that I stay 100 feet away from any of them. However, in our small town, such a distance might as well have banished me to a life under a bridge outside of town. After wrapping up work, I sought solace in one of the local bars owned by a client of mine. Thanks to my efforts in computerizing his point-of-sale system, he could manage his operations efficiently. As I approached the bar, the owner greeted me with regret in his eyes. "I'm sorry, John, but I can't serve you," he said quietly, his voice tinged with sympathy. "Words out, serving you, talking to you, or even being friendly could spell trouble with loan accelerations. You'll have to leave." Understanding the gravity of the situation, I nodded in acknowledgement. Aware of the blind spots in his security camera system, I discreetly made my way to the back door. Waiting for me outside was the owner, a 12-pack of my favorite beer in hand. "John, I'm sorry," he murmured, offering the gesture as a peace offering. "Hopefully, Butler will come to his senses and put an end to this nonsense." With that, he slipped back into the bar, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a small token of solidarity. I hugged the wall, making my way back to my desolate apartment. I found a used but functional mattress, box springs, and Hollywood frame propped against the back door. Relief washed over me. I wouldn't have to endure that aired again. After chilling the beer, I carried the bed up to my apartment and set it up. With a few beers and a comfy bed, I had a better sleep. The next day, I went to Mark's to get groceries. But when I got to the checkout, they asked me to leave without buying anything. Mark himself came and said he couldn't go against Wayne Bubler, who had a lot of influence. "John, I like you and your family, but I can't go against Wayne," he said. He pushed me out, pretending to be angry. That night, I found all the groceries I had picked out packed in a wooden box with a lock next to my back door. The key was on the front tire of my car. When I tried to move the box, I realized it was really heavy because it had steel plates on the bottom. It became evident that my mysterious benefactor had taken precautions to prevent theft. Though it wouldn't deter a determined individual, it served as a deterrent to the average passerby. Leaving the box outside, I ventured out of town for a couple of days to attend to other clients. A seed of an idea began to take root in my mind. Unable to procure what I needed locally, I stopped by a small out-of-town service station and purchased some small fuel cans along with regular gasoline and diesel fuel. On each trip out of town, I diligently acquired a couple of key items necessary for my plan's execution. Meanwhile, Amanda and Simon intensified their efforts to torment me. I was compelled to change my phone number due to Amanda's incessant calls, only to have law enforcement officers visit me repeatedly, accusing me of violating the protection order. Despite proving that I never answered her calls, I endured their harassment, being told to quit messing around and leave each time. The situation escalated to the point where I couldn't even fuel up my car. A company vehicle, no less, without encountering trouble. I had to delegate the task to someone else just to ensure I could continue with my work. My scheme finally reached fruition when Butler Federal Bank began harassing my mother. She received countless calls urging her to take out a reverse mortgage, while the county claimed they hadn't received her tax payment. Upon contacting the tax office, I learned that Wayne Maines was exerting pressure on them to harass my mother. This was the last straw. Wayne had crossed the line. Unable to threaten my mother directly with a mortgage, he resorted to other means of harassment, causing her undue stress. I had enough. With just a week to prepare, I knew my retaliation had to be swift and effective. I planned to act at night when only a few police officers were on duty and probably sleeping in their cars. Along with planning my revenge, I got an old beat-up pickup truck from a farmer in a nearby town. I didn't register it right away because the license plates were still good for a few months. The farmer hid the truck behind an old house about a mile outside of town so no one would see it until I was ready. When night came and all the town stores were closed, I started my plan. I made sure each place was empty and dark. I didn't want to hurt anyone too badly, but there were a few people I wouldn't mind seeing get hurt a bit. I started by turning off the fire alarms in the stores which I had installed before. I left the hospital and bank alone because messing with their systems could break federal laws. My first stop was the convenience store on the edge of town. With a swift blow from a brick, I shattered the glass door. Armed with a makeshift Molotov cocktail created by combining diesel fuel and gasoline, I ignited the wick and hurled it inside, ensuring it caught a shelving unit to break the bottle upon entry. Across town, I repeated the same tactic at the other convenience store, the wails of approaching sirens marking the response of the volunteer fire department to the initial blaze. A smirk played on my lips. Wayne, who had maneuvered his way into becoming the volunteer fire chief and sat on the fire department's board of trustees, had always been obstinate about allocating funds for improvements. Tonight would serve as a reckoning for his short-sightedness. My next destination was the farm supply store, where the manager had always been a vile character, even before my own persecution began. There, I strategically deployed 3 Molotov cocktails at various points within the building, ensuring the fire could spread rapidly. Despite the sprinkler system activating, the lack of supplemental water from the overwhelmed fire department rendered it futile, allowing the flames to engulf the store unchecked. As the flames engulfed most of the commercial area in town, I placed a call to my former residence using a burner phone. Through the electronic voice changer I had acquired, I kept it brief and to the point. Disguised as Darth Vader, I warned Amanda about an arsonist and advised her to take herself and the kids to my mother's house for safety. From a discreet vantage point down the street, I observed as Amanda left about an hour later with the kids, heading towards her parents' lavish mansion. I anticipated her reaction, but she was in for a surprise. Taking my time, I ensured that my old house was ablaze before casually strolling a couple of blocks to my car. Upon Amanda's arrival at her parents' gated community, yes, our quaint town indeed boasted a gated enclave complete with security patrols. She was greeted with a sight of their home engulfed in flames, her mother standing outside in distress. It turned out that I had overseen the computer system for the gated community and their security company. Conveniently, the security patrol was occupied responding to a break-in alarm when the fire ignited. Later, I found out that Amanda and her mom stayed at my mom's house because even the local hotels had computer problems and couldn't take guests. My last move was to leave the company car at the office. Then I threw my last Molotov cocktail into the car and set it on fire. Amanda, Simon, and her dad didn't know that I had canceled the insurance for both the building and the cars. I went to the first fire scene where the fire department was trying to stop the fire from spreading. Wayne, Amanda's dad, was there in his fancy firefighter outfit, telling the crew what to do. The police were busy investigating other fires, so no one stopped me. Wayne had upset the other fire departments, so they weren't coming to help. He was facing the consequences of his actions now. I sneaked up behind Wayne and used the voice changer again. Placing a small dowel against his back, I delivered the message as Darth Vader. Do not turn or make any sudden movements, or you may face severe consequences. Wayne froze about to protest, but I silenced him. Shut up and listen. Your town is burning down, and unless you mend your ways, further consequences will follow. No one is immune to retribution, not even your own home, which is now engulfed in flames. Heed this warning and change your behavior. Ensuring he remained immobilized, I gave him a forceful shove, causing him to land in a muddy puddle. His pristine white gear was now thoroughly soiled, much to his dismay. As he attempted to rise, I nudged him back down with my foot, leaving him with a face full of mud and water. With that, I departed, vanishing into the onlookers gathered to witness the futile firefighting efforts. Making my way to the concealed pickup, I drove out of the vicinity, keeping a safe distance. I knew that despite the corruption, an incident of this magnitude would prompt at least some investigation, and I'd fully expected to come under suspicion. I relocated to a bustling metropolitan area, 3 states away from my hometown. There was no attempt on my part to conceal my identity or establish a new persona. Frankly, I didn't see the point. My access to my children had been severed. They were now under Simon's care. Financially, I was destitute, unable to provide child support or alimony. With law enforcement likely on my trail, I refrained from launching a new business endeavor. Instead, I secured a position in the aid field, a familiar domain where I resumed my previous line of work. I exercised caution, even driving considerable distances from my apartment to make phone calls using a burner phone, driven by my paranoia of being tracked. As it turned out, my apprehension may have been unnecessary. When I finally reached out to my mother, she greeted me with relief, eager to share the latest developments in her hometown. Firstly, I'm relieved to hear from you. Initially, there were concerns that you might have been inside the apartment during the fire, but no evidence of your remains was found. Eventually, speculation arose that you had left town after leaving a resignation letter for Amanda and Simon, which likely perished in the fire. Thanks for getting in touch quickly to tell us you're okay. Secondly, Amanda and Simon didn't get married after all. It turns out Simon was already married in another state and hadn't finished his divorce. Amanda and the kids stayed with me until she could find a new place to live, which is actually smaller than your old house. Lastly, the fires caused a lot of problems. Many of the businesses and homes that got damaged were insured through the bank's insurance company. The big claims made the insurance company cut ties with the bank's insurance agency. When they looked into it, they found out that Wayne Butler, who was the fire chief, hadn't let the fire department use modern methods and hadn't made agreements with other fire departments for help. So, the insurance company is taking legal action against Wayne for causing all these big losses. Also, a new bank has opened in our town, and a lot of the businesses affected by the fires got loans from them instead of Butler Federal Bank. This means Butler Federal Bank lost some money. Unbeknownst to me, Butler Federal Bank had a board of directors who are displeased with Wayne's management. He's currently under close scrutiny. Furthermore, since Amanda's marriage plans with Simon fell through, She has rescinded the protection order and is eager to reconnect with you. Moreover, the children remain legally yours. Amanda has petitioned the judge for modifications to the divorce proceedings, as the finalization hadn't reached the 90-day mark. It's possible you're still legally married. The kids continue to inquire about you daily when they visit here after school. In a surprising turn of events, it came to light that Judge James had a collection of cars, a fact he had kept under wraps until that night. Unfortunately for him, the collection was destroyed in the fires. Rumor has it that Wayne, in an attempt to minimize expenses, only insured the cars with basic liability coverage. Because of this, the judge lost a lot of money, and he started acting differently towards Wayne Butler. Right now, we're looking for a new police chief because the sheriff decided not to run for office again. Some deputies and officers have quit because of this. Amanda's parents are having a hard time finding a place to live after their house burned down. It's tough to find a temporary place to stay, and they're not sure if they can rebuild their house because there aren't many builders available. Amanda even asked me if they could buy or rent my house, but I didn't trust them after how they treated my son. Wayne tried to be powerful, but now that he's in trouble with the law, people don't listen to him as much. Even the tax assessor didn't listen to him. Interestingly, my missing tax payment showed up after that night when some of the assessor's vehicles caught fire unexpectedly. It seems like Wayne's power is getting weaker, and a lot of people are happy about that. Most people aren't too bothered by the fires and think they might actually be a good thing. But the business owners who were affected and Wayne Butler are really upset about it. Well, it seems like I'll need to come home soon, I said with a laugh. But first, I might need to get a better car. My old one barely got me here. I'll come see you soon, Mom. Second story. Wife 42F of 17 years just told me she cheated twice, while I 37M was his boot camp. Wife 41F of 17 years cheated on me 37M when I was in boot camp. TLDR. My wife 41F of 17 years just now told me she hooked up 2 different times while we were engaged and I was in boot camp. Need help. When we first met, we really hit it off. We quickly started making plans for our future together, and I felt a strong connection with her. I knew she had just ended a tough relationship with someone who treated her badly for 4 years. She had been through a lot and was still dealing with the aftermath, including an unplanned pregnancy and subsequent abortion. She opened up to me about it, and although it made me think about leaving, I cared about her deeply and wanted to support her. We became very serious and decided to move in together, sharing a rental house with my brother and his girlfriend. Eventually, we even got engaged. However, I realized that I didn't have a stable job to support us, so I made the decision to join the Marines. We planned to get married before I left for basic training, but we worried about upsetting our families, so we decided to wait until I returned from training to tie the knot. We rode each other every day, and it really helped me get through it. The drill instructors would tell us about Jody at home with our girls, and I thought, not me, our relationship is strong enough. I was so excited to see her at graduation, and then I left again for more training. We got married right before getting assigned my duty station. We were so happy. It has felt like a fairy tale ever since. Our relationship was the rock and core of myself. I've had cancer diagnoses, other major events, and took them all in stride because I had a solid relationship. Fast forward 17 years, 18 next month. We have a great life and child together, and she admits to me that when I was in basic, she hooked up 2 different times. One with my brother's GF's brother in the house we had together while he was visiting. They had known each other for a while, and the other was another bartender at the bar she used to work at. I asked her why, and she said it was tough, and she was lonely, it was just sex and attention, and that she never didn't love me. I can't understand that. I just feel devastated and rocked to my core. I'm on here because I don't want family and friends to think differently of us. We have this whole amazing life together, and I don't want it ruined by this. I just can't understand. She said she has been faithful and took our wedding vows seriously. My vows didn't matter as I felt the same from the moment we were together. Any have a similar situation or advise? Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you are moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon. Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. My wife and I both work at the same place, a marketing firm. Lucy works with customers, but I'm not sure what exactly she does besides being friendly with them. I'm Mark, and I'm in charge of the team. Everything was good for us. We had jobs, a nice home after renovating it, and 2 great kids. Emma, who's 13, and Daniel, who's 11. We live near our families and have good friends. We're both in our 30s and get along well, even though we look different. Lucy is tall, with long blonde hair and blue eyes. She says her family is from Sweden, and she looks Scandinavian. She's slim, energetic, and always moving. I'm the same height as her with sandy hair. I like sports like cycling and running, so I'm fit but not super muscular. It was a surprise when I got invited to a long weekend on a private island owned by one of our company's clients, Jack Edwards. Our CEO explained that he and his wife, Margaret, were traveling along with several directors and their partners. Lucy was also invited as she was the client's main contact. It sounded like I was there to crunch the numbers, but hey, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Jack explained that the client was very wealthy and could easily become our firm's largest client. We would leave early Friday morning and return on Monday on a private charter, and everything would be provided to us. Lucy knew everything when I mentioned it on the way home. She had been working with the client for several months and seemed very impressed and was looking forward to the free weekend. I asked her about the weekend, but she didn't seem to know much, so I asked her about the client. Lucy explained that his name was William Fellows and said that he was in his mid-40s, looked good, exuded self-confidence, and had inherited the family fortune. She seemed a little fascinated, describing him as bossy and reserved, among other things. I thought, he seems a bit full of himself, but I'll keep that to myself for now. 2 weeks later, on a Friday morning, we were on a private plane. I was impressed. If the island belonged to him, it must be really nice. I wasn't sure what to expect, but it looked huge, maybe 5 miles long and a couple of miles wide from what we saw as we landed. It looked like a fancy resort, with buildings behind the sandy beach shaped like a crescent. Lucy was very excited, and so were the others. We got shown our rooms and then had lunch with our host on the porch with a view of the bay. I wanted to dislike him, but William seemed okay. Lucy even said he wasn't as bad as she thought he'd be. He looked like George Clooney. He thanked us for coming and told us to make ourselves at home. We chatted with the other 3 couples from our firm and met a stunning brunette named Charlotte, who I assumed was William's weekend date. Besides the waitstaff, the only guy there who wasn't introduced to us looked like a security guard and hung around in the background. I wondered what kind of enemies William had that even on a desert island he still needed protection. William greeted Lucy like an old friend, and they felt very comfortable in each other's company. But she and the others seemed to obey most of his words. I suppose this was natural since he was an unusually generous host and their most valuable client. We had a great afternoon snorkeling, kayaking, and generally lazing around in the bay. Free drinks and food were constantly offered. We enjoyed the evening dinner with all the members of the group. The atmosphere was friendly and relaxed as we chatted in small groups. Charlotte came up to us and introduced herself. She was sweet and talked about growing up in England. I got the impression that she was from a wealthy family, but she seemed genuinely nice. I wondered if she was a model or maybe she didn't need to work. To my surprise, she was quite flirty with me. Even in front of Lucy, I managed to politely avoid her, simply chalking it up to being too friendly, full-time care, no children, time to relax, and an idyllic location, the perfect setting for a romantic night. Lucy was particularly loving, and her lovemaking was intense. She told me she loved me many times. It was a really good night. Maybe this Love Island thing isn't so bad. I hoped we'd have another good time in the morning, but Lucy got ready quickly for breakfast. I finally got out of bed and joined her while she was talking to Jack and William. I wondered if it was about work because they seemed a bit stressed. Maybe William was using the weekend to talk about work stuff. When I got closer, the conversation stopped. We had a quick snack, then spent another nice day by the pool with the others. On Saturday, we went out to dinner, and I noticed Lucy was dressed up more than usual. She looked amazing in a fancy red dress and high heels. After dinner, William asked if we could spare him a few minutes. We agreed and followed him into the office, followed by a security guard. William sat down in a high-backed leather chair, and I sat on the sofa opposite Lucy, noting that she sat slightly away from me. After a long pause, William spoke. "I have a proposal for you, Mark. It is personal." "Okay," I answered, trying to appear calm despite being completely stunned. William continued, "I've had the pleasure of working with Lucy and getting to know her better over the past few months, and it's been an absolute pleasure. We get on fantastically well and have built a great relationship." He paused, perhaps waiting for my reaction, but I had no idea where he was going with this, although the word relationship made me feel a little uneasy. He continued casually, "As a result, I have a proposal. I would like to spend the rest of the weekend with Lucy. Of course, I will be happy to compensate for the time she would have to spend with you, and to do this, I intend to transfer $100,000 into your joint account. I laughed. It was supposed to be a joke, and I couldn't resist making one. Well, William, it looks like you're a little tight-fisted. Didn't Robert Redford offer more than £1 million for Demi Moore? Nobody laughed anymore. William continued, as in any other business, I'm willing to negotiate the price to get what I want. Also, Charlotte will be in a tough spot, and I'd appreciate it if you could keep her company. I turned to Lucy, hoping she'd smile, but she seemed worried instead. This isn't a joke, Mark, she said. William invited me to go with him, and we should really think about it seriously. I wanted to punch him, but before I could react, the guard was already nearby. I was surprised at how fast he moved. William kept talking, saying, I promise your wife is on board with this idea. What's the harm? We'll all have fun, and you'll earn a lot of money. I turned to Lucy. Maybe the difference in price is explained by the fact that Demi Moore didn't want it for that amount. Lucy flinched at this remark, but she was smart enough not to say anything. I desperately tried to think, but was forced to focus on my breathing, which was becoming increasingly labored. I looked at the guard. His demeanor had completely changed. He looked wary and focused on my movements, and with good reason, since I really wanted to punch William in his pretty face. What is your name, ex-military, judging by your appearance? Shane, sir, and I cannot comment on this matter. And if I attacked your boss, I think you could kill me with your bare hands or something. Shane smiled, maybe just to keep me from doing this, sir. Turning to William, I said, it's a good thing you brought him, otherwise I would have beaten the crap out of you. William didn't seem bothered at all. Let us not rush, Mark. A lot depends on this. Lucy spoke next. Mark, think about it. Just a couple of days and money will change our lives forever. I was devastated. She clearly planned and wanted this. Tell me, dear, did the offer of money come after you too? I asked why they decided to do this, but got no answer. So I said, I think Charlotte was offered to make the deal better. Is she a prostitute? William said, Charlotte is my friend. She's rich and a fancy escort. She only takes jobs she likes. Don't worry with her. You'll have a unique experience. I said, that still sounds like they're both prostitutes. Lucy winced again, but didn't say anything to calm me down. Well, William, I said, you can take your money and shove it. It was at this moment that Lucy spoke and showed her true colors. This is my body and I want to do this. It's just sex and we'll both be interested in exploring it with others. William and I like each other, but that's it. That doesn't change our love for each other. I'm sure you and Charlotte will have a good time too. I was stunned by her words, which slowly came to me. The difference, my dear wife, is that I don't want anyone else, and this is much more than you imagine. This is betrayal and conspiracy behind my back. I will never be able to trust you again, and if you are ready to do it once, then why not do it again? Lucy quickly said, You're overreacting. I told you about this, so it's not a secret. I'm being honest. This will happen, then I'll come back to you completely. If you love me, you'll let me do this one thing. Think about what we can do with the money, like holidays with the kids. Don't use our children as an excuse. We don't need money, and I won't take you back just because of money. You being honest only works if we agree on something together, but you only agree with this pompous guy. Money is just an excuse you want to do it. I think you only brought up money and Charlotte because you didn't think I'd agree. Well, you're right. Even with money, I still don't agree. Lucy continued, You're right. I want to do this. I want to experience something different, something new, and I am attracted to William. But this should not hurt us. I don't want to change, and you think this is better. Have you already made your choice, even dressed up for it? Don't resist, baby. You won't like the consequences. What do you mean? I asked. Well, you won't come out of this with good consequences if you fight this or go for a divorce. You will lose everything, your home, children, even your job will be in jeopardy. And there is no need for this. So just accept it. Everything will be much easier. See you tomorrow, and remember, I love you and only you. I needed to leave. Breathing was becoming a real problem, and if I stayed, I would lose it. I stood up, feeling unsteady, and staggered towards the door. I heard Lucy calling my name, but I kept walking. As I was crossing the hall, Charlotte came up to me and hugged me, saying that everything would be fine. I turned to her. Who are you? A consolation prize. She walked away with her head held high. I kept walking and eventually got outside and walked halfway across the yard, but I didn't feel very good. I heard footsteps behind me and was disappointed to see that it was Shane and not Lucy. Listen, Shane, you just need to back off. I said I would love to, but I need to make sure you don't do anything stupid. For example, do you have any ideas? Because I don't have any, Shane replied. Mark, you look sick. Just sit against the wall, bring your knees up, and take deep breaths slowly, Shane said. After a bit, I felt better. Thanks. I think it might have been an anxiety or panic attack, I said. Shane said, You looked really pale, but now you look better. Talking about bad ideas, is there a way to leave this island? I asked. Shane said, Seriously, you can't leave today. There are no boats, and the plane and pilot left for another job. You might be able to radio for help, but a cheating wife is hardly an emergency. I'm glad you think she's unfaithful. She doesn't seem to understand that, and I'm already starting to doubt myself. What should I do? I asked. Because of you, I can't even beat the crap out of him, I said. Yes, sorry about that. I would like to step aside, but I will never find a job again, Shane continued. Listen, think about what you are going to do and come up with a plan. Whatever you need to do can wait until Monday. It's like in the army, form a plan, sit quietly, and don't tell them what you're going to do, Shane advised. The problem is that I have no idea what to do. They seem to have everything planned, and I will have to sit and suffer tomorrow and Monday while you babysit me, I replied. After a long pause, Shane suggested, There's a ship coming early Monday morning with cargo. You can take it if you want to avoid the plane with everyone else going home. They can't stop you. No one, including me, wants to be accused of kidnapping or imprisonment. I can even go with you. This contract is losing its attractiveness. I don't like being on the wrong side, even if it pays well. Okay, that sounds good. I just need to get through tomorrow, I said. How about we go for a hike around the island tomorrow morning to take your mind off things, Shane suggested. And you should think about Charlotte. She's a great girl, and it seems like you don't have anything to lose, he added. I'll give it a try. Who knows, maybe she'll change her mind, I replied. But she didn't change her mind as expected. Surprisingly, I fell asleep, probably because I was tired. The next morning, I quickly changed into my gym clothes and went downstairs, hoping to avoid everyone and go on my date with Shane. Unfortunately, as soon as I entered the dining room, silence reigned there. I looked for something quick to eat and grabbed some fruit. The noise of conversations was heard. I heard comments about everything being fine, no big deal. She will come back. Then CFO John Cousins came up with his wife. Look, we've all been through this. Just let it happen. It's nothing personal. He dates other wives, but then moves on, and he is very generous, he said. At that moment, Lucy and William appeared. She looked absolutely pleased with herself. I would say radiant if I had to describe it. At least she did until she noticed me. Her smile faded. She let go of that asshole's hand and came over to kiss or hug me. I pulled her away at arm's length and looked around. God, I thought, what a damn idiot. Everyone knew what would happen before the weekend even started. What an absolute fool I was. I went out. Lucy spoke. Please stay, Mark. We can chat with the group and have another good day together. I looked around. All eyes were fixed on me, some in anticipation. Others clearly amused by the scene. No, he paid for you and can keep you. But before I go, I need to tell the group something. I believe this weekend has been planned for quite some time, and you all have known about it, so it's only fair that you all hear what I have to say. All members of the group looked at each other in shock, nervously glancing at each other. Jack and Margaret, I would never have come this weekend if you weren't here. It never occurred to me that you would be involved in something so vile, and approve of what he does like some kind of fan club of sick voyeurs. I hope you enjoyed keeping me blind. I noticed how they all began to move awkwardly. This was clearly not part of their plans. I actually felt we were friends and making me feel at home, so they could arrange everything was a nice touch. And you're wrong, Bill. This is very personal, so thank you for your role in destroying my marriage. The fact that they are willing to use leverage over my children is frankly disgusting. I don't allow anyone to threaten my children. Lucy insisted, You're making too big a deal out of this? It was merely a momentary lapse, a fleeting encounter that shouldn't shake our foundation. I've already expressed my love. I interjected. Here comes the initial line of defense. Trying to downplay it, are we? I'm well aware you had a game plan for how I'd react, being the captain and all. So let's dissect what you had in mind. Phase A. We stay put, and you gradually normalize the situation before we return home. You and your friends probably talked about this seriously, preparing for it before it even happened. You're likely expecting me to swallow my pride, not overreact, and handle the situation like an adult. You think it's just about my ego and pride, right? You know it won't work, but it's part of your plan to make it easier. So, for the next step, after the weekend is over, you let me take charge. We'll be close, maybe even trying new things together. With your connections, we'll strengthen our relationship and come out stronger. You might even have plans to charm me, because, sweetheart, you can't let me feel sad for too long. Lucy looked nervous, glancing at William, showing that what I said had an impact. Additionally, we'll have access to the funds he promised you. With the earnings from your side endeavors, we can treat the kids to a Disneyland trip and meet Mickey. These words elicited visible reactions from several individuals evident from their shudders. If we are still fighting, Phase B kicks in. You already sowed the seed last night. If I really love you, then I should allow you to do this. For 15 years, you have been a wonderful wife, and this is just one night for you. Yes, this may begin to weaken my resolve, but what do I get after 15 years of devotion to you if I'm treated like crap? You knew I would never agree, and you attacked me with a complete lack of respect, so this plan won't work. Now you're a little worried. Maybe you better give me time to cool down. In a week or two, you'll find me drowning my sorrows in a bar somewhere, and then you'll ask for forgiveness. This is Phase D. You actually regret all this. You didn't realize it would hurt me so much, and you never would have done it if you had known. You love me, beg, cry, and all that. I must admit that you have a chance. But then the way you just walked hand in hand with him in front of everyone and looked so delighted with yourself, this confirmed to me that there really was no guilt or regret, only contempt and a desire to humiliate me. Phase D won't work for you. So finally, a backup plan may be needed. Phase E threats, you will take all the money in the house and set the children on me. You've already suggested that I might lose my job. William will pay to find you the best lawyers. I will end my life sad, poor, and lonely. You can even threaten to move in with him and live happily ever after with our children. William raised his head so quickly that I almost laughed. Oh God, it looks like your lover doesn't really want your children, baby. Lucy finally found her voice. It's not such a big problem, she started. Let's just relax and take some time to think, she suggested. This is Phase of Lucy. We've been through this already, I said firmly. Why don't we save time and get to the final result? I was thinking about it last night, and I think everyone, including the kids, would be better off if we got divorced. It's healthier than staying in an unhappy home. In the end, you can't be happy if you're dealing with this stuff, and I'm not happy either. You might try to keep me from seeing my kids, but you know I'm a good dad, and that's what's best for them. And they're old enough to understand. I doubt your family and friends will support you, not after they find out what you did. I don't care about money, it's always been you. Everyone sat in shocked silence, eyes wide as goldfish. Do any of your bastards have any more tips? Did I miss anything? No, don't think. Oh, and one more thing, Jack, you can shove your job up your ass. But I'll see you in court for a forced dismissal case. My job depends on the client having my wife. It seems that this is simply the reason. With that, I walked out. You could have heard a pin drop. Shane followed me as always. As we left, Shane chuckled, well done. I see that you took to heart the advice to keep the plan to yourself. I couldn't help but smile. Yes, it looks like I failed at this idea. Shane actually laughed. As we left the building, it's good that you remained a civilian. You would never have achieved success in the Army anyway. Let's go. Shane grabbed his backpack and set off at a leisurely pace up the coast. After a mile, I was having trouble keeping up with him and began to think that perhaps it was a mistake. I heard him shout something from up front about how physical torture is a great way to take your mind off mental torment. My burning muscles and lungs seemed to agree. The scenery was breathtaking and Shane was in good company. He switched from asking about me to hilarious stories from his time in the British Army. We spent several hours circling the northern part of the island, climbing along the coast. We headed to a high point in the center. I was barely out of breath when Shane suggested we jog back since it's all downhill. I could barely keep up with him, but I suspected he was slowing down to either support me or torment me, depending on your point of view. We returned at noon. I was panting and exhausted, telling Shane that until today I thought I was in shape. He was hardly out of breath, but was kind enough to say that I was pretty fit, and that it wouldn't make me feel too bad since he was a physical education instructor in the Army. I staggered to my room. Lucy was not there, and I wondered if my wife was earning an extra fee. I showered and, finding myself very hungry, headed to the dining room to find some food, but was again disappointed to find William and Lucy there. Shane was also there, hanging out in the background, and I wondered how he managed it. He looked fresh as a daisy and fully dressed in a suit. William began to speak with his usual airy confidence, and I want to apologize. I've never had problems like this with my relationships before, and I certainly don't want to jeopardize your marriage. It's too late, you've already done it, I replied. I want to withdraw my request to spend this evening with your wife and increase the compensation. With these words, William handed me a piece of paper. I opened it and saw a check for $250,000. I stared at Lucy, who looked like she was crying, and I couldn't help myself. You must have been pretty good to earn that much, baby. Lucy's eyes flashed with anger. That's not the point. We made a terrible mistake and we're trying to correct it. William was the perfect gentleman and was genuinely concerned about how you reacted. I laughed at this statement. What is your idea of an ideal gentleman? Did he say thank you after he finished having sex with you? There's no need to joke, Mark. This is just a miscalculation on her part. We miscalculated your reaction to what was happening. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for both of us. You should thank Lucy for giving up things to give you and the kids a better life. Just a mistake. I don't think so. I told you what I thought about your plan, but you went ahead anyway. You could have stopped it at any time, but you only stopped after you got what you wanted. You planned this too. So, I tore up the check. I saved you from being tricked. The only thing left is the cheating, but I don't know if I can fix that this time. Lucy started crying right away. I turned to fellows, why are you doing this? Control or the thrill of having someone else's wife? Either way, it makes you a very sad bastard. Lord, how old are you? 48 years old, and you act like a child stealing toys just because you can. Don't you have anything more meaningful to focus on? William laughed in response. I run an international corporation and give millions to charity. I have something to focus on. According to the research I did last night, you inherited this corporation and under your management, it is shrinking. When it comes to charities, attending galas, dinners, and fundraisers must be difficult. When was the last time you did something yourself, got your hands dirty, and actually helped another person? I doubt you have it in you. You're so self-absorbed and too busy playing games with people's lives. Judging by the way you planned this weekend for everyone to know, you must be turned on by humiliating others. Sorry, Lucy, but it wasn't just because he wanted you. He wants every board member's wife, so you're one of many. Why don't you, William, try to grow up, have a real relationship with someone, put some of your wealth to good use, and stop being a complete? For the first time, I saw him stumble over his words and look unsure of himself. I told Shane, you better get rid of that junk before I lose my temper with you. I saw Shane smirk a bit before telling his buddies, I think it's time for us to go, sir, before things get unsafe for you. After they left, I grabbed a snack and headed to the beach, trying to avoid everyone else. Just when I thought I was alone, I saw Charlotte relaxing in a hammock reading. If she was pretty before, when she smiled, she looked even more beautiful. I went over to her and said, sorry about last night. But before I could say more, she said, it's okay. I thought you'd say yes to the offer. If I knew you wouldn't, I wouldn't have asked. Your reaction is totally fine, and your speech at breakfast was really good. I couldn't agree more. When you left, Lucy burst into tears, and I've never seen William look so embarrassed. I loved every minute. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that considering what you're dealing with, I answered. Thank you. Good. I'm even glad that something is starting to become clearer. I'm already tired of being told that this is nonsense. You see, William has no idea what to do with you. He had never been rejected before and was not used to dealing with morals. Has he already offered you more money? Yes, just before it came down. $250,000. Damn idiot. I told him not to do it, but he's used to paying enough until he gets what he wants. He will pay for this both in business and personally. Charlotte was easy to talk to, and she listened intently as I talked about my marriage and children. She was clearly intelligent and highly educated. She expressed surprise that Lucy would do this while on a seemingly happy marriage, suggesting that there had been some kind of unhappiness or open marriage arrangement between us. I thought about it. No, it's just an unexpected ambush. She seems to be completely fascinated by this guy. He can have that effect on a woman. It's all very charming, but the river isn't that deep, if you know what I mean. We talked some more and I felt a little better. I think you really love her. Your reaction to the proposals and at breakfast must be breaking your heart, she said. I shrugged. I'm sorry that I took part in this. It's not your fault. I just need to survive one more night and then maybe I can escape. She smiled again and it was starting to distract. Well, maybe I can help with this. Everyone was surprised when I came to dinner. Lucy no longer sat next to William. Dinner was quite normal, although I ignored Lucy's attempts at small talk. When Lucy asked if I wanted to go to bed early, I smiled and said I had other plans. She seemed embarrassed, especially when Charlotte hugged me as I got up. We left the room together and walked down to the cabins by the beach. The original plan was just to leave together and show Lucy how it feels, but holding Charlotte felt nice, really nice, and when we kissed, it made some of the disappointment from the past day go away. I thought about sticking to my morals, what I believed was right and wrong, but then I looked at Charlotte. I guess Lucy wanted me to be more open-minded, and as far as I'm concerned, Lucy already broke our marriage vows. I had an outstanding night with Charlotte. It wasn't just her beauty. She had a serene sexiness. Every move seemed so precise and perfectly timed. She truly was a master of her craft. Surprising myself, I didn't think about Lucy and didn't feel guilty. The painful memory of Lucy with William easily eliminated any hint of remorse. I had a good time. Boat taxi to the airport and then the usual flight home. I picked up the kids and made arrangements for their weekend as best I could. I made up a story about having a fight with their mother, but I said we'd fix things. I suggested dinner when Lucy came in with our heavy suitcase. The kids ran upstairs, saying hi to their mom. Lucy smiled and said dinner was a good idea. She wanted a few minutes to get ready, but I said I'd rather go alone with them, like she suggested before. When I met William, I felt a connection right away. He seemed charming and strong, like a character from an old movie. But later, when Mark was around, he was different. We flirted, had lunch and dinner together. It was exciting, but I didn't want to cheat, so I told him. William talked about open relationships, and I wondered if Mark would be okay with it. When he offered, I thought the money made it okay. Jack agreed, and we started planning for the weekend. The weekend started out brilliantly. I had a great time with Mark and almost gave up on the whole thing if only I could. William said that everything would be fine and that he should relax. Both he and Jack said to expect Mark to reject the idea, but to give him time to calm down. Mark reacted completely differently than we expected and planned. The biggest shock was that he actually looked unwell. I wanted to run after him, but William assured me that everything would be fine. He asked Charlotte to meet him, so when he didn't return, I thought he was staying with her. I was relieved, and after months of waiting, I was desperate to spend time with William. As soon as he kissed me, I realized that I would succeed. He led me into his bedroom, and before I could take off my clothes, I was already excited with anticipation. William stood in front of me and undressed me as if I were the most delicate trophy. I felt so special. Despite his age, he was incredibly fit. I was not disappointed by his body or his manhood below the waist. When I reached out to him, William pulled away and started kissing my whole body, kissing me everywhere. Slowly, he gauged my reaction and responded, seemingly in sync with everything I wanted and needed. My first climax came quickly, caused by his skillful caresses. He stood up and began to kiss me passionately. He was a skilled lover. I was stunned by the sensations that washed over my body. Now I was completely captured by desire. He increased the pace and began to take me hard. As the next climax approached, William followed me. Finally, we both relaxed in each other's arms. I woke up in the middle of the night confused, believing I was sleeping with Mark in shock to find another man lying next to me. I felt guilty, wondering where Mark was and how he was feeling. I must have disturbed William because he woke up and kissed me, and my guilt was soon forgotten when he climbed on top of me again. This morning, I was brushing my teeth when William came up behind me. He seemed insatiable. We got back on the bed and held hands. Then I pushed him onto his back and sat on top of him. I was happy to see desire and happiness on his face. It matched with our big moment. It was just like I wanted, and I was really happy. I kissed William and thanked him for the great night. It felt right to hold his hand as we went downstairs to the dining room. I was excited for another night. But then I looked at Mark and everything fell apart. I felt scared when Mark got really angry. Everything seemed to go wrong. It was clear he hadn't slept with Charlotte, even without that. I thought that he would leave, but I did not expect such anger. What scared me most was his cold rage. Mark was too logical in everything. He anticipated almost all of my well-developed arguments when I brought them supported by William. They sounded much more convincing. But Mark crushed them all in 5 minutes, making them sound weak and pathetic even to me. I tried my best to hold my position, but I realized that I was losing. After he left, I collapsed, sobbing hysterically. William looked unsure for the first time. When I came to my senses, I tried to find him, but I couldn't. Jack and William then proposed the idea of stopping everything by offering more money. When we offered Mark more money later that day, I was amazed at how things turned out. William's presence had diminished so much that he truly seemed small and insignificant. Before that, his authority was such that I believed everything he said, but now this authority was undermined to the limit. He assured me that we could have fun without ruining my marriage. This plan crumbled into dust, and I was no longer sure of anything. I then flew into an irrational rage, assuming that I would stay on the island longer and have fun, but was surprised by Jack's calm but cruel response. "Don't be so damn stupid, Lucy. If you want to have even the slightest chance of saving your marriage, ask for forgiveness. You better be honest and serious in what you say." He doesn't seem like a man who's willing to change his mind. Personally, I can't argue with anything he said at breakfast. I was even more shocked when Jack told William that they would never have the same things again. He continued by saying that Mark was a decent guy and didn't deserve any of the crap we caused, and William should take his advice and think about growing up. I was amazed that Mark was present at the evening dinner. I tried to talk to him, but he simply ignored me. When he left with Charlotte, I was devastated. I was going to run after him, but what could I say because I basically told him to do it and spent most of the trip justifying meaningless sex. I felt really mad and hurt. Then I remembered I did similar things with Mark before, but what made it worse was that it was all planned out and everyone knew. I guess I deserve it in a way. Maybe if we both cheat, it'll help us stay together. The plane ride back without Mark made me realize how bad things were in our marriage. He found a way to leave the island before us. After that, I didn't really talk to him properly. I started to feel really guilty about what I did. I tried to focus on the money. Who would say no to that much? I couldn't stop crying, and I felt like I was losing control. Jack and Margaret were worried about me. When I got home, Mark was there, but he didn't want me to have dinner with him and the kids. I almost managed to hold out until they left, and then I burst into tears again. Exclusion from the meal seemed to be an ominous prelude to my future life. When I came to my senses, I desperately tried to think of what to say when Mark returned. The problem was that everything sounded like what he had already said, and I was embarrassed to ask my mother or friends for advice. Mark, when we finally got home, the kids went straight to their bedrooms as usual, burying their heads in video games and phones. I stood and looked at Lucy in the kitchen. She seemed completely unfamiliar to me. She almost whispered, "Can we talk? I mean, properly." I shrugged, thinking that we should figure this out eventually, so why drag it out? "I'm sorry, Mark. I promise you that it was just one time, and I will be yours and as faithful as before the weekend. I did it for the money. It could be life-changing for us as a family. I did it for us. You did it for yourself. We were fine and money wasn't a problem. You couldn't wait to jump into his bed. You must have been in for a fancy dinner and sex overall. Everyone had a good time. You were overreacting. It shouldn't mean anything. You really should skip phase at Lucy. And you know it. This wasn't casual sex. It was a planned betrayal. Arrogant, selfish, all those traits that I hate. And now I hate you very much. So you did the same thing back to me." "No, I didn't. I got back at you because nothing else seemed to make you understand. You were too wrapped up in yourself to see how it hurt me. I wouldn't have even thought about it if I had a loyal wife. And I hope it hurts. Really hurts, so you can understand how I feel. But I didn't plan it all out like you did, making myself look stupid. By the way, how long did you plan this, and was it your first time with him?" Her eyes got big at this, but then she realized it was a fair question. "It was the first time we had dinner, and I knew he liked me. I think Jack and Margaret were feeling me out, asking if I was interested. The four of us were having dinner, and for the first time in my marriage, I found myself aroused by another man. His confidence was intoxicating. I knew it was wrong, and I resisted with all my might and managed not to have an affair. Then William suggested the idea of asking you about opening up our relationship and what you thought about changing. We talked about this briefly one evening, but it was clear that you would not agree to this. Then he came up with the idea for this proposal, and I thought that the money would make it all worth it for you. We were nervous as the trip got closer, and he suggested inviting Charlotte to ensure that you would agree. I didn't like the idea, but by then I just wanted it to happen. I thought that even if you didn't entirely approve of this, we would recover. Then you so effectively destroyed all these ideas at breakfast, and I began to realize the consequences of what I had done. Was it worth it? No, of course not. I was so carried away by him and listened to what he said. I never meant to hurt you. Oh, then straight to phase D, unintentional pain. You were enjoying this. It was clear enough from the way you were flying around during breakfast. Now you're just telling me what I need to hear. Sorry, the honest answer is yes, I liked it. He was good. It's not bigger or better, it's just different. It was exciting, new exciting, and I was fascinated by it. He is very experienced and knows what he is doing. But this was the only time. Please don't abandon us and break up our family because of a one-time incident. I found myself smiling wryly. It's funny, but that's exactly how I would describe what you've already done, destroyed our family because of a one-time act. It's all on you, not me. You're right, it's all my fault. I'm so sorry. I love you with all my heart. Well, not with all your heart. You gave part of it to him. And even if you claim that you didn't, your love still wasn't enough to keep me faithful. How can I trust you again? I was so trusting because it never occurred to me that you were capable of what you did. I think I don't really know you. I can hardly bring myself to look at you, let alone pretend this didn't happen. Lucy recoiled in shock. You can't say that you love me. I know I never thought that I could lose you. I agree. You only thought about yourself and your ass, and not about me and the children. But sometimes love is not enough. I tried to calm down and move away from gaining points in the argument and anger. After a long pause, I continued, listen, Lucy. Even if we try to stay together and forget about what happened, things won't be the same. You broke the trust and love we had for each other. Remember, we cared about each other and the kids more than anything. We didn't want to hurt anyone else. I never thought you could hurt me like this, Mark. I love you. I messed up and I'll do anything to make it right. But that doesn't mean we should get divorced just because you want it. You broke my heart and threatened me. You don't do that to someone you really love. Lucy stared in silence, stunned, not knowing what else to say. We need to talk about the children. I think that children are better off in separated families than in dysfunctional ones, so from this point of view, the best option is divorce. I agree that you will win custody, but don't try to stop me from seeing them. It will be better for you too. They are listening to me. You are not very good at setting boundaries. I frown at the irony of that comment, and they are already testing you. It will be better for you and for them if I remain in their lives. Lucy shrugged seriously. Lucy, no matter what happens, don't stop me from seeing our children. Don't alienate me. I am not a bad guy. I treat them well and love them to bits. You haven't seen how angry I am yet. I will fight you to the end, spend all our money on lawyers, and we will destroy each other in the process. I warned her. She nodded. I would never do that. You are a great father, and they need you. They will want you to continue to take them with you on trips and practice with them in all sports sections, she said. I turned and looked at her, surprised by the first comment in which I felt that she was not trying to manipulate me or justify her actions. Be careful, Lucy. You're throwing off Phase D seriously, even though you know who I am. Why do this? I can only think that deep down you wanted us to break up. God, never, Lucy said urgently. There is no excuse for this. I became selfish, convinced myself that I could get something more. It seemed to me that somehow I could hold you. Why didn't you stop me that night and just go? I felt suffocated and had to leave. After that, it didn't seem to matter much anymore. Knowing you wanted another guy at any cost meant I had already lost you. This conversation ended us long before you went to his bed. Maybe it was over when you started planning everything. You spent weeks talking to him and getting ready. Letting you go without stopping you makes it easier to end things. There's no going back, and that was the start of the end. Our marriage was ruined in less than 4 days. We divorced, fortunately without any need for counseling. I think Lucy didn't want to explain her actions. On the one hand, it's a shame. I was hoping someone qualified could show how wrong she was. She did keep one promise. And in the end, we spent approximately equal amounts of time with the children. She even admitted to them that everything was her fault without going into details. They were old enough to understand and often decided for themselves where to stay. They were at that age when parents became famous taxi drivers and loan sharks. I'm biased, but I think they are great kids and handled the breakup very well. Children can be surprisingly resilient. Under the terms of the divorce, Lucy could keep our house until the children were of age and then sell or buy it. But I still wanted this for the children, and it allowed them to attend the same school. Fortunately, the right decision paid off. By the time the children went to college, real estate prices had skyrocketed. Lucy had to buy the share from me, and it was the best investment of my life. How could she afford this? Well, we kept $250,000 and divided it up in the divorce. And just like with Charlotte, I couldn't hold myself to the moral high ground. What can I say? I am a practical person. Either way, it felt like a small thing to do compared to what I lost in my marriage and the life I used to have. I quit my job, got some money to avoid trouble, and started my own web design business. Lucy tried to get us back together, but I wasn't interested. So, was it right to end things? It was messy, and nobody really won, but the bad things I thought would happen didn't. I wasn't going to forget or forgive what happened that night. It's important to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and like who you see. Second story, wife still talking to her ex. What should I do? My wife, 35, has been occasionally in contact with her ex behind my back for about 7 years now. We have 3 children, and the oldest is 7. When she was pregnant with our first, her ex reached out to her and told her he was still madly in love with her. And she told me this then, so I said she needed to never talk with him again. I had a bad feeling recently and looked at her phone and saw she has been in contact with him for the past 7 years behind my back after I told her she couldn't talk to him anymore. I don't believe they have hooked up, but the text messages were very flirtatious, and she has been telling him that she will always love him because he was her first true love, and they were kind of talking bad about me in the text. Her ex is a really good athlete and is about 6'5", and she has told me he is hung like a horse. In the messages, he made some remarks about my height. I'm only 5'7", and she laughed and said, "Tell me about it. I went from 6'5" to 5'7". She also asked him for advice about sports for our son, and he said, "Too bad his dad isn't an athletic stud like me," to which she laughed and said, "Could have been you, if you didn't run off with that other girl. He broke up with my wife for another girl." These are just a couple of examples. These texts were only a few conversations every year, but it really bothers me that she has been lying to me about being in contact with him all this time and how she was basically putting me down to her ex. I'm having a really hard time with it. It has made me extremely self-conscious, knowing that she basically thinks of me as a little unathletic guy. I confronted her, and at first she freaked out and said that I wasn't supposed to see those conversations. She has since apologized and promised to never speak to him again, or I told her it would end our marriage. She sent him a text in front of me saying that I saw the text and they should never speak again, but I can't stop thinking about her emasculating me to her ex. I am kind of obsessing over it. Any advice would be great. Thanks. Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you are moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon.